Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and today we're going to be discussing the ramifications of Rivalry Week. That's always a tongue twister. Rivalry Week. Rivalry Week. Anyways, so a lot of things went down this weekend. Start off with Tulane losing to Memphis, effectively ending Tulane's probability of making the college football playoffs. Friday, we had the Georgia Tech game where Georgia Tech was up late. They were up by double digits late, and they just couldn't finish it off. And that was unfortunate because, in my eyes, there was a lot of egregious officiating in that game. And I believed that Georgia Tech deserved to come out of that game with a win. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They were up 17-0 at halftime. They're up 17-6 after the third quarter. And they were up 27-13 with 5:37 left. 8 overtimes later, they lose 44-42. Again, it was very frustrating if you were a Georgia Tech fan watching that game because you did everything you could to win that game, and a few bad bounces here and there caused you to lose that game. Obviously, the backbreaker was Haynes King fumbling the ball after he got the first down on a third and short situation. This kid had the best game he could possibly have. 26 of 36, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 24 carries, 110 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's just that fumble where I believe it was a targeting. You could see his helmet just reverberate all over the place because of how he got hit. And there's another play where they missed a holding on a Georgia Tech player, and on one of their touchdown catches, it looked like the ball was tipped. They didn't review it. They called pass interference. It's not pass interference when the ball's tipped. Yeah, and it's just unfortunate watching some of these games now on ESPN where the SEC bias is just full front and center. If you took a shot of how many times or every time that Joe Tessitore said that Georgia is going to make the playoffs with a win, your obituary would be written right now. We get it. You think Georgia is one of the best teams in the country. They're a flawed team, and it's probably going to show in the playoffs. Are they one of the 12 best teams? Yeah. But just don't shove it in our face every single second. Let's enjoy a classic game that's unfolding. But again, it was a really good game. Colorado absolutely annihilated Oklahoma State. What a finish to the season by Oklahoma State. You start off 3-0 and you just lose 9 straight. One of those wins was a SEC win, by the way. So you could be an SEC team, but you couldn't beat a single Big 12 team. But that's neither here nor there. Boise State, 34. Oregon State, 18. Both Alshon Jeanty and Travis Hunter made their cases for the Heisman because I believe Cam Ward's out at this point. Jeanty had 37 carries, 226 yards, and 1 touchdown. Travis Hunter had a pick, and he also had, I believe it was 2 touchdowns? Yes. No, 3 touchdowns. 10 receptions, 116 yards. So, great game by those two. I want to save the game for last. Texas is going on to the SEC championship game as they beat A&M 7. The only time Texas A&M scored was on a 93-yard interception return. Quinn Ewers played with his messed up ankle. Had a somewhat rocky game, but 17-28, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Arch Manning made a cameo appearance and got a rushing touchdown. But yeah, A&M really just couldn't really do much. Marcel Reed was dinking and dunking all over the place, 16-23, but 146 yards. He had 60 rushing yards on 14 carries. Just kind of bottled up all around. Only 248 total yards of offense. Texas. This is the crazy part, folks. Oregon, a former Pac-12 team, has the opportunity to win the Big Ten. Texas, a former Big 12 school, has the opportunity to win the SEC. Arizona State, a former Pac-12 school, has the opportunity to win the Big 12. And SMU, a former American Athletic Conference, so AAC, has an opportunity to win the ACC. So just food for thought as a lot of these people bicker about the concepts of a 3-loss SEC team making it and conference supremacy and whatnot. Anywho, Arizona State absolutely annihilated Arizona 49-7. The Iron Bowl was a snooze fest. Alabama wins 28-14, but it just wasn't pretty. Jacquez Hunter for Auburn only had 56 rushing yards. And Peyton Thorne was trying to throw it all over the place, 24-41 for 301 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. What really kept him in the game was all the turnovers by Jalen Milroe. He had 3 fumbles, 2 of them lost, 1 interception. He was 18 of 24 for 256 yards, but it was all on the ground. He had 17 of 104, 3 touchdowns, and Jam Miller had 28 for 84. Just, again, really ugly game. But, a lot of people have been convinced that Alabama was one of the best teams in the country. I'm trying my best not to show how much I dislike this whole SEC bias. Clinched their way into the ACC championship game with a 38-6. I mean, they were already guaranteed, but this kind of makes sure they can make the playoffs, ideally, with or without a ACC championship berth or win. Notre Dame handles USC 49-35, a little closer than you wanted it, but again, it's a rivalry game. You throw the records out the window. You throw them in the trash, whatever you do with them. You don't regard the records. Penn State allowed Maryland to score the first touchdown and then ripped off a 44-0 run as it went 44-7. South Carolina scores late. They beat Clemson 17-14. Clemson loses their opportunity to make the college football playoff there. Technically, they could have backdoored their way in at 10-2. And they face SMU now that lost in the ACC championship game. So they could have come all the way back, but unfortunately, they could still make it with a win. It just makes it that much more difficult for them. Tennessee secures a playoff berth with their 36-23 victory. Miami, we'll see what happens with them. And then we come to Ohio State, Michigan, the game. Ohio State came in as a multiple touchdown favorite. I believe it was 20.5 or 21 in some different places. The final score is 13-10 Michigan. Big Boo goes into the horseshoe, and they just, again, it's the same story it has been for the past 3 years. 4 in a row for Michigan. They just out-physical Ohio State, in the trenches. They dominate, and it's just a lost season for Ohio State at this point. They're probably still going to make the playoffs. I don't see them falling beyond 10 if Indiana's at 10 and they have the head-to-head, even though they don't have the same record. And the committee likes to do this whole thing where they don't care about close losses and you throw the records out the window, like I said. But, Ohio State missed 2 field goals. They had poor play calling in the red zone and just poor game plan overall. Ryan Day deserves a lot of the negativity that's surrounding him in the sense of how he performs in big games, because what him and Chip Kelly did this game was atrocious. Mind you, Ryan Day is 47-1 against the Big Ten, but he's 1-4 against Michigan. Any other team not named Michigan, he virtually beats outside of, Oregon this year. 1-4. 47-1 versus 1-4. And you have Jeremiah Smith. You've got Carnell Tate. You've got Emmanuel Ugba. Might have butchered how I pronounce that. But again, you've got 3 guys who are probably going to be picked in the first round. And you're just trying to do halfback dives with Quishon Junkins and Travion Henderson when Will Johnson, one of the best cornerbacks in the country for Michigan, is out. And their strength right now is their defensive line. And you as an Ohio State coach know that you've lost your center for the season and you lost your left tackle for the season. And I know the left tackle Simmons was probably going to be drafted in the first round, if not a very, very high draft pick. I'm not sure about the center. I know centers are just a different story when they get drafted. Junkins averaged 3.8 yards a carry. Travion Henderson averaged 2.1. It's just Will Howard, 19 of 33 for 175 yards with a touchdown interception. I mean, you have all the talent discrepancy. First of all, you didn't get a sack. It's not good when Caleb Downs, your safety, is leading the league team in tackles. You only had 3 tackles for losses. But, man, what game plan are you having? You have 3 all-elite wide receivers. It's just Jim Harbaugh and Michigan just broke something in Ryan Day where instead of just going out there and trying to win, trying to dominate this game, you want to try and prove a point. We can be more physical than your line of scrimmage. We can outrun you. We can do all this stuff. Just go out there and win. You blew it. Davis Warren, the former walk-on, was 9 of 16 for 62 yards. 62 yards, let me repeat that. And 2 interceptions for Michigan. Their leading receiver was Marlon, in terms of receptions, was Marlon Klein with 3. The junior tight end. But Khalil Mullings had 32 carries for 116 yards. Donovan Edwards, 4 for 11. Alex Orji, 3 for 32. Davis Warren, 1 for 11. Jordan Marshall, 1 for 3. They finished 41 for 173 and 4.2 yards a carry. They didn't have a sack, but they also had 4 tackles for losses. Mason Graham, the top-tier defensive tackle, the junior, 7 tackles. He was wrecking havoc in the inside. Amir Hall and Makari Page both had interceptions. Oh, and Caleb Downs had 1 for Ohio State. And who had the other one? Let me check that real quick. Jack Sawyer. He dropped into coverage and got the interception in the end zone. So that was actually a great play by Jack Sawyer. But man, this coaching staff really, really let this team down. And all the rumors say you spent $20 million on this team to make it somewhat of a super team to try and, get past Michigan, and Michigan had a down year, so all things were pointing up for you. You had a 1-point loss to Oregon. At Oregon, you can kind of defend that. But this, indefensible. Now the volume on Ryan Day being the wrong man to lead this team turns up to 11. And I'm going to leave everyone with this image. After the game, they were singing their fight song or whatever it is, and Michigan tried to plant a flag at the center of the field because they're at Ohio State, and a ruckus ensued, pepper spray, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of stuff happened. And there's images, and this happened in other games as well, like in the Arizona State game, even the FSU game. Norvell was the one who actually ripped the coach. Coach Mike Norvell was the one who ripped the flag out of the ground and threw it away in disgust, and then had some choice words for Sunbelt Billy Napier. And Coach Moore of Michigan was out there trying to separate, players and making sure they get back to their respective spots. Even Steve Sarkisian did this post Texas and Texas A&M that he directed his team, don't bother doing that stuff, guys. We're not about that. We don't do that. Go back to the locker room, and everybody left without any sort of issues before they even planted a flag. Ryan Day just stood there as Jack Sawyer is screaming, we can't let them plant the flag on our field again. The 4th-year senior who, when he committed to this program, Ohio State was dominating. I think they won 15 out of the last 16 before then. It wasn't even close. And he leaves Ohio State with an 0-4 record against his team. And you just have a close-up of Ryan Day looking dazed and confused. And someone gets close enough to him and he goes, what happened? That moment right there encapsulates why, in all likelihood, even if they make the college football playoffs, they're not going to go far. And he is not the individual to lead this team. I know that's hard to say for someone who I think is 66 or 67-10 in his coaching career, but I'm sorry. With the way Ohio State recruits, with the NIL funds that they have, with their talent discrepancy that they have in the Big Ten compared to, all but 2 or 3 teams in that conference, the fact that they haven't had a Big Ten championship since 2020, the fact that they're missing the college football playoffs on a consistent basis in terms of they should be versus every other year, or, now they're going to make it this year because it's 12 teams. I really don't think they're going to fall that far, but we'll see. It's going to be a long offseason for Ryan Day, if he has a long offseason. So it was a very intense week. I really don't want to dive into the ramifications more like we did last week with the college football playoff and, rankings and discussing what happened. I just really want to get this out and have my quick thoughts on a lot of things. But we'll dive deeper into it once the college football rankings come out. We'll have a separate podcast on that. So thanks for enjoying this quick hitter. I know it wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be, but just wanted to get my thoughts out on this. So as we're approaching the end here, you guys know the drill. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's all there for you, folks. Thanks for listening to this one, and we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights.